Let's go to one or two general comments that we've had in over the last couple of weeks. Dewey is an atheist and says, wanted to talk about the argument that really brought Lear to faith, the moral argument for God. Now, Dewey says, our values are sometimes the same or similar, and that may be because they are instinctive. You often cite our common values as evidence of a universal moral code that could only have come from God. Well, why? Why God and not our common descent? Every species of animals has its own values. They're surely not from God. At any rate, if all other species can have values as a result of their biology, why can't I? Why can't we? Your guest, Lear Labresco, holds that we have common values that can only come from God. But while we have some values in common, there are differences. There's no unity in the church or in religion either. No unanimity as to what our values should be. Why has Lear chosen modern Catholic values? Why not 16th century Catholic values? I know what I want, and my morality is founded on that. It consists of that. I don't care what God wants. I want what I want, probably because it's instinctive, and I haven't been denatured or messed up by mad ideas or a bad upbringing. It's good because it's what I want. Okay, thanks very much for that, Dewey. I didn't have time to read all your email, but I just think you fundamentally misunderstood. I have to go. You're not going to thank me for saying this, but I just think you fundamentally misunderstood the moral argument for God. It's not about whether we share a moral set of... as it happens, there are a lot of shared morality in the world, and some people might suggest that point to it, but it's really not about whether we share moral instincts. It's more about whether people believe that there are objective moral values. And the fact is, a lot of people do simply believe that there are some things that you just can't quibble about, that slavery is wrong, and it wouldn't matter whether we lived 250 years ago and we all believed that it was perfectly fine to buy and sell people in the slave trade, we'd be wrong about it. That's the point. And if that is true, then the argument follows that if there are to be objective values, there has to be an objective moral lawgiver, etc. And your comment that what is good is simply what you want. I mean, well, does that mean what Hitler wanted was good because that was what he wanted? I mean, does it not rob the very word good of all meaning in that sense? Anyway, let's move on. I don't care what God wants. I want what I want. It's good because it's what I want. I don't care what God wants. I want what I want. It's good because it's what I want.
Ich hatte gut daran getan, von Jahren alle höheren Offiziere liquidieren zu lassen, wie Stalin!
The Bible, in a manner of speaking, is like the newspaper, right? It's going to report some really horrendous stuff. That doesn't mean it's endorsing it. And when it mentions all these terrible things that happen in the world, it provides as a premise from which to condemn those things. See, that's the difference. The atheist can complain all they want, but it's really impotent. It's just saying, my subjective opinion du jour is that I don't agree with this, where I can say, based on my Judeo-Christian biblical worldview, I can condemn this absolutely. So let me jump really quick into just some technical stuff about the difference between morality and ethics, because this is where we're coming down to saying, well, morality is relative, so that's why you have your opinion, I have mine, they're both just as valid. Well, okay, hold on a moment. Now, technically, I would say morality is subjective, it's tentative, it's intrinsic, it's situational, because technically morality really refers to the mores, and the mores are merely a description of whatever it happens that people are doing. So whatever a society is doing, that's their morality. Where on the other hand, ethics is absolute, it's objective, it's extrinsic, it's from without, because ethics refers to the ethos, and the ethos are the actual prescriptions of what people should be doing. Now, I'll give you an example or understanding the difference in a moment. But let me just take a step back, because what I'm saying is not that you have to change your vocabulary to use these certain terms, because some people will use the term universal morals or objective morals, and they're referring to what I just defined as ethics. So it's not so much what words you use, but that when you get into these discussions, you need to take the time to say, when you say this, what do you mean by it? When you say morality, what do you mean by it? Because you need to make sure that you're understanding each other's terms before jumping into this discussion. So I'll give you a great example about the difference between morality and ethics, or morality versus objective morality or universal morality. Okay, we just had this issue going on with people wanting to take down the statues of Confederate leaders, right?
Right.
Okay, so I could say, well, that proves to you that there's no absolute ethics, there's no absolute morality, because obviously everyone's disagreeing. That's basically two sides of that issue, right? They're disagreeing.
Right.
Fair enough?
Yep.
Okay, now wait a minute. At one level, they're disagreeing, because one side is saying, no, that statue represents a hero, and the other side is saying, no, that statue represents a villain. But notice where they are agreeing is on the ethical level or on the absolute level. Both sides agree, first of all, that there is such a thing as heroism and villainy, and that heroism should be praised and villainy should be condemned. You see, on that level, both sides agree completely. It's just a matter of the application. That's where they're disagreeing. So there's an absolute level every side agrees on. No question about it. That's the ethic. That's the God-ordained law in our hearts that recognizes and affirms these things. The other level is a separate issue altogether in my mind.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So then when I start thinking about atheists condemning God or the Bible or what have you, that's the kind of stuff I'm thinking about, okay? Because the catchphrase I've come up with is atheism discredits condemnation, and condemnation discredits atheism. So atheism discredits condemnation because the view of atheism is that, what I hear all the time, morality evolved. Am I right on that? Have you guys heard that?
That's
Oh,
one of
yeah.
the claims,
Okay.
right? It's,
So now the first,
it's to preserve society.
Right.
We agreed corporately on moral, on our morality to preserve society.
now the first thing I generally pick on, because I hear it stated that way all the time, morality evolved, is, wait a minute, that's past tense. Evolved? Who told you it stopped evolving? So then they're forced to say, okay, well, morality is still evolving. Okay, so basically what you're saying is that what's moral today could be immoral tomorrow. What's immoral today could be moral tomorrow. I mean, it's like Dawkins' idea of the zeitgeist, right? The spirit of the age. It's ever shifting, ever changing. So what basically atheism discredits condemnation, because when they tell me that they're condemning things in the Bible, all I have to do is say, well, hey, that was the morality back then. So what? Now we changed our minds. You can't condemn the past for what we now have decided is immoral. Well, they thought it was moral. So you just discredited yourself. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Because they it's kind of like you might as well be condemning the earlier forms of hominids for not
Right.
being as perfect as we are.
Exactly.
Then, what's the point? You just are you saying that evolution itself is a bad thing? Are you saying survival?
Yeah. The other line was that condemnation discredits atheism, because they still go out and condemn. I mean, frankly, atheists are the worst sorts of fire and brimstone preachers, because they jump directly into condemnation. But why would, if they were logical thinkers, they would recognize that they're condemning past actions that were moral back then. They're not moral today, so I have no right to condemn them. That's if they were consistent thinkers. But they still want to go out and condemn, I'm sure for more reason than one. The main one I'll pick on right now is because what? Well, they have that God written law in their hearts because they're made in God's image. So they want to condemn wrongs and evils and pain and suffering. And there's part of me that really appreciates that, because I can see where they're coming from and seeing so much evil in the world and saying this is wrong. I mean, I can appreciate that, but their worldview does not provide them the foundation from which to do that. So their condemnation of those things, it's like C.S. Lewis says, a man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of what a straight line is.
Right. So they borrow.
And it's just,
they're borrowing our ethics.
yeah. They're begging, borrowing, and stealing, the way I like to put it.
Yeah, they borrow or steal our ethics and try to use them to condemn us.
I don't care what God wants. I want what I want. It's good because it's what I want. I don't care what God wants. I want what I want. It's good because it's what I want.
Dann bin ich der, der